Welcome to the Konglish Talk podcast, a chill talk show brought to you by some States girl and Korean guy living in Korea. My name is Leah.
And I'm DS. And today's topic is Hagwon. It's called the Cram school in these states, right?
Yeah, Cram school.
Don't forget to follow us and set the alarm. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Popbang, and soon YouTube.
Here in Korea, it would actually be considered cram school because people go to Hagwons after their regular schooling.
They're just like an education market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there are different kinds of Hagwons in Korea, and some of them are individually owned by like one person. Yeah.
Anyway, so let's start talking about what the Hagwon is, how the Hagwon in Korean become really, really popular like that. So let me start first about this. The Hagwon is basically like a private education system or like private education service in Korea. They are separated from the school education system, like government education policy. It could be called like an after school in this case, but like they are usually for the Korean test or Korean SAT test, like entering the university or something like that, or getting more high scores in your school's test.
Yeah, in America we would call that cram school. In America we don't have cram school. There's no such thing as that. So we don't have this kind of system. You might have some parent who might have some money and they really want their kid to go to a good school or something, so they might hire a private tutor, but it's not very common. We
have like 82,000 Hagwon in Korean and 14.2 million students take classes. And like 316,000 teachers are teaching those students in Hagwon. We usually have 600,000 people per year take the Korean SAT test though.
Yeah.
I know, it's really a lot. I'm gonna show you a picture on the Hagwon street in Dachidong. This is how we do at the 10 p.m. All the students go out.
That's so crazy. Yeah, they had to, I don't know the date, but they had, like, when it was enacted, but I know that they had to put in a law that students can only study until 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'd be literally studying.
The Hagwon will be closed if you are against the law for 3 or 4 times. Let's talk about how it get popular. How those kind of Hagwon get popular, really.
Yes.
As you know, Korea had a really big war and...
Yeah, Korea went through a huge economic boom. Korea is known in the world of economics as one of the big Asian tigers because of that.
Yeah, thanks to that war, we got separated by 2, and we had a really, really hard scar in our overall systems, including all the economics,
socioeconomic, socioeconomic, cultural stuff.
Well, to develop our country, we made our system to the elitism, so that the elite can control all the world for all the system in the country, and we always thought that they will make the best choices for our country, so they made every decision and they made really high development in our country, but they also got a lot. Well, our parents looked at that and they always thought that if you want to earn some money, we should be elite or we should make our children elite. So after that, our country are really eager to let our children, let our children and let our whole society learn everything they need. But I think that's so far, and for now, we made a lot of private education systems, and nowadays, it became Hagwon, and we really teach it, and we really pay a lot for the education market.
Yeah, and it also kind of, like, it can also cause a little bit of problems because from a really young age, kids are studying and not having as much fun and free time of what they want to do. There's this like really big pressure. And so a lot of the younger generations are trying to like fight off of it. But that's where the stereotype comes from in America, from people who immigrated to America from Asia. Because a lot of people, not just Korea, but a lot of people from Asian countries have a similar mentality.
Yeah, they are.
So there's the stereotype in America from non-Asian backgrounds that, wow, they're all so smart because they study the most in school compared to some other kids that don't have the same background with their parents, but that's where this comes from. Their parents really want them to study hard and get into a good school and set their good future, especially if they are immigrants. So that's where that stereotype comes from.
Yeah, true. Whenever you watch the American soap operas or something like that, you can always see the Asian.
Nerd is always the Asian or something like that.
Well, what's the Spider-Man Homecoming or something?
Oh, well, yeah, no. no, anyone. We're more aware now.
Well, yeah.
No, we can all strive for more. All of us should strive for more.
The private school in the States and the Hagwon in the Korean is really different. Yeah. Yeah,
that's another thing is that when I was applying to schools here, a lot of the thing is that when you're trying to choose between teaching in private school and teaching in public school, a lot of teachers who come from the West, when as teachers, we are used to the 8 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m. work day. That's when our schools are open. But in Korea with private schools, they run until 6, 8, 9, and now 10. And like I said, the older your students are, the later your schedule is going to be. And so because of the culture difference, a lot of teachers that end up teaching in private schools really end up hating the schedule. Unless they're a night owl, a lot of us don't really like the schedule that much because we're not used to having to study that late at night.
Well, they always make the school right after the school finish. Like, for the middle school and high school, it will be like 3 or 4 p.m. after they finish. They always go to the Hagwon, and they mostly study till 10 p.m. Let's try to talk about the private tutoring.
Yeah.
So, in Korean, private tutoring is really popular too. Like, even the university students do the tutoring as a part-time job. Even Korean really do that as a part-time job, as like a babysitting.
Yeah, like, one of my kids actually, like, her art tutor, I didn't even know people had art tutors.
Yeah, I only heard about that.
I was so like, wait, what? So whenever, like, coming from America, whenever I thought of tutoring or lessons, like, I thought of lessons as, like, singing lessons or music lessons. A lot of people who are involved in the arts in America, they get tutors or people giving them private lessons. That's definitely a thing. And people get tutors for math or science or something like that. But usually for subject tutoring, our public schools offer that after school. So, like for me, whenever I was failing my geometry class in high school, I actually had to go. It was like mandatory for me to go to tutoring. So we would go during study hall periods or like an hour after school. We are now going to be talking about the SAT system in Korea and the SAT system in America, or I should say college system, because we have ACT and ACT. So, I think it's a lot more, the college entrance is a lot more intense in Korea versus America. It is a little bit more intense. It's important in America, but it's not as intense as here. And the main reason for that is because you can take the SAT and the ACT as many times as you want. I think ACT actually has a 12 cap. I think you can only take the ACT 12 times, but SAT is unlimited. You can take it as many times as you want. And so that's why it's actually encouraged that you take the ACT or SAT, at least maybe three times, so that you can improve your score and you can just send the highest scores that you have to
Then
the
let me ask you
university.
this. How many times can you take per year? That's the important thing, I guess.
I'm honestly not really sure. I think as many times as you want per year. It's unlimited. I think per year you can take the ACT maybe 12 times. And SAT, it doesn't matter. We take it on like weekends and other times, not during school. You have to schedule it, but they have a lot more times that you can sign up for versus here in Korea. There's like one day, and he'll get into that. But in America, we have multiple times that you can go in and take them. But when it comes to the SAT. It's a little bit different in terms of how it's structured. So it's much more math-based. So there's like an 80-minute, over an hour math section, and then only 35 minutes for language arts and reading, writing, that kind of thing. ACT is a little bit more divided. They have a shorter math section, they add a science section, and they have an English and like they have a writing. It's more focused on like the writing too. So I actually prefer the ACT because of that. I'm not strong at math, so my SAT score was really shit.
Let me ask you then. So for the ACT, you guys write down the article or some kind of.
So they'll have articles or writing passages for like the reading section, and then you'll fill out what's the main idea and like other stuff. And then for the writing section, it's more like short essays. And that's like where I'm strong at. So I scored really high on those. My math section was but there was less focus on the math section because SAT is really, really math focused. So if you're not somebody who's strong in math, may not be the right one for you. But people have to study really hard for that math.
We also have something like SAT and ACT too. First, let me talk about the SAT. So Korean has a yearly one big app event for those students. Like, it's called 수능. So the full name is 대학 수학 능력 평가 시험. We say Korean SAT because it is really similar to SAT, but it's a lot longer and we only have one chance per year. So it's usually second week Thursday of November though.
Yeah. So like people go even when they're sick.
So whenever they see they could screw up all the tests and they have to do one more year.
You know, there's like a thing in America where it's like we don't go to the hospital unless we're actually bleeding out. It's kind of like in Korea, that would be the case. That's not usually the case unless it's 수능.
Yeah. For the 수능, we should go to the 수능 test field unless you're gonna die.
Yeah, exactly. How long is the test?
So it's really whole day. We start at like 8:40.
Yeah.
8:40 and we take the Korean test for like 90 minutes.
90 minutes?
90 minutes.
So over an hour.
And we take like 15-minute break and take the math test for 100 minutes.
Oh. Although we have an 80-minute math section, so that's not too far off, but I just hate math, so I'm like,
we just give us 30 questions. After taking a 1 hour lunch, we take a 70-minute English test. At this time, the whole airplane should stop.
Yeah.
So at the first 20 minutes of the English test, we have a listening test for that. So a lot of high school students and persons who are retaking tests and those parents.
Yeah.
And they are really eager for their children and themselves to getting better score. And whenever they lose one freaking question from the SAT test, they will be freaked out. And for the listening section, the noise of the environment is really important. So even the government blocks every airplane.
It's really intense, but to be fair, it's considerate. The government's really like, fuck you, you're not flying this shit. Our kids are taking their future, basically.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah,
seriously.
Like, seriously, yeah.
After that, we take the 30-minute Korean history test and 60-minute science test. And if you choose the third language, you should take another test.
Oh, wow.
So the ending time will be like 4 p.m.
Yeah, 4 p.m.
Yeah. That's how we do. And why do we say Korean SAT test is that it's really similar to the SAT. We only have we don't have writing section or we don't have speaking section. We only have the listening for English, and every test question will be reading.
Do you have a science section?
In SAT?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
We don't in our SAT. Just ACT.
We have a science or society. We can choose one of them based on your major and where you want to go. So since I'm an engineer, I chose the science section, but for those who want to go to the management major or like society major, they choose the society one.
So like usually in America, I mean, there will be a lot of kids will choose their major going in, but not everyone. Some people have no idea or they choose later. So that's why we don't really have like our SAT and ACT is a little bit more general because of that, because you'll get a lot of kids that go in undecided or they change their majors later a lot. So, yeah.
And for the ATC, the 논술시험, if you are in a society related major or like management major, they just give you the society topic or like the Korean lecture topics or something like that. I didn't take those liberal arts 논술시험 because I'm an engineering major though. I don't know much about that, but they just give one really large article and tell them, okay, write about this, about your idea, or like they gave you a question for like 1 or 2 and they give you like 90 minutes for that.
Oh, okay.
That's how they do for the management or like society major at AT 논술시험, and in the engineering or science 논술시험, 이공계 논술시험, we get some science and the math questions on the paper, and we literally solve them mostly. Yeah. So that's how we do. We just write it and we solve it, and that's what we do.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the entrance system.
Mm-hmm.
And how's your entrance system in this stage then?
So basically all of the schools list their score policies, but there's no penalty to taking the SAT or ACT multiple times. Some schools might say, send all of your scores in, and some schools say you can just send one in. It doesn't really matter. You just send in your highest score, and that kind of determines not only entrance into the university, but also scholarships that you're applying for and other things like that you can qualify for. That's what the ACT or ACT helps with. But if you don't have really strong SAT or ACT scores, a lot of kids also just go to community college, where it's a lot cheaper, it's less intense. Anybody can go into community college, and then they just study hard there, and they transfer to another university maybe 1 or 2 years later.
So
a bigger university, I mean.
Mm-hmm. Korea has like 2 separated systems, 정시 or 수시. Mm-hmm. So 정시 is for the SAT test only, but 수시 is kind of like we use like 논술시험 called Korean ACT test. Do you guys have some like entrance system with your high school scores?
I mean, they take into consideration your high school GPA and things like that, but you send those in with your ACT or SAT scores. So when you're applying on the university's website, you upload those scores. You can, the SAT and the ACT have their own website, and you go in and you order, like after you take your scores, they come out and you can download that form to upload to whatever school you're applying to.
Mm-hmm. But in Sushi, we have a system only using the high school GPA too. Though.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they factor in both.
So for the Sushi, we start Sushi first so that we can use those children's high school GPA before we take the 수능. Mm-hmm. So at Sushi, we can choose from, there are like 3 big topics. It's like 학생부 교과, 학생부 종합, 논술. Like 학생부 종합 and 학생부 교과 is almost similar. They just use the high school GPA and some of your teacher's recommendation and which prize did they want from the school or
we have that too, but it's all cumulative. Like you take it all together. I mean, you put it all together when you apply. That's what I mean.
But when you apply Sushi, we don't have the 수능 score, so we only use the high school GPA. And if you choose the 논술시험, then you just go to the test field and you just take the test. That's what they do. Well, and after taking the Korean SAT test, you need that score for the proof that you achieve the minimum level of the Korean SAT test for that. But unless that we don't use the Korean SAT test score for the Sushi. But at Chongqing, we only fight with our Korean SAT test. That's why we are really eager for that one yearly test. Well, anyway, we finished with that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is all for today, and we're gonna see you on the next week.
Yeah, thank you for watching and listening.
Bye.
Bye.